you're the space in between, and if you're drawing from what scientists would say the quantum realm, or even more primitive, the informational meaning realm, even things below the quantum, like you're just drawing that directly, and the powers that it gives us, you know, like you said, are mind-blowing. So let's bring it down to a more practical daily life aspect, right? Because someone who really, they might already be a natural, maybe they will take the 9 years, maybe they won't take the 9 years, maybe they'll go to.
I want to preface that that's a priest path. Now, to create alchemy, I could teach people that at a much faster pace. It depends on what they're looking for. To create internal alchemy is something that can be acquired at a much faster pace. And quite frankly, I've seen people develop these types of skills in as little as 12 months.
And I'm glad you're mentioning that, right? Like you said, you might technically, just like you went into a meditation class and boom, you go into this other class and boom. So you're going to have some people that can do things right away, and they have a natural ability to tap in, we'll call it. But I'm glad you clarified that if someone, it's the priest path, if you will, if someone is going to become the priest of that specific form of practice, it's going to be a 9-year curriculum, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's not only going to be intellectual, it's going to be experiential as well. So yeah, so let's bring it down to the practical daily level. And imagine that there I am looking at someone and I'm like, wow, clearly they are a practitioner of Taoism, because I can see how they are a different human. How would you describe that?
Well, if you're at a level of sensory perception to perceive or actually see their aura, it'll be significantly different to the average Joe. And it normally comes in a profile that is luminous in sort of a white phosphorus white light with a gold glow around it, and their halo is normally gold and celestial purple in color. And the density, just like the feeling, the density you're experiencing right now, is a knowing of holy moly, we have hit dead center. You will experience something that is beyond the spoken word, and it will be the experience, the dense knowing. And so some people it will reveal themselves as, if you're not at that level of development at that moment, and everyone can be, I want people to be very clear that on a short term, you will experience this just elated, euphoric expansion that comes with that moment. So you will immediately just like, I just like being around that person. There's something that's just, and this is what we speak of when we're talking about the language that people don't realize they're using all the time, the energetics that come with the, I like that person, I like this energy, I don't like this energy, this place has a bad energy, that person has a good energy. And people use this all the time, yet they have this absence of consciously being aware that this is the sort of terminology that they use all day long. And so for the first evidence based for anyone that's around that, you will just feel embodied and a part of that person at that moment, as if you'd known them for many years. They become a good friend. There's a warmth to them. There's an expansion to them. These are some of the profiles of energetic profiles that you can experience. And again, this can be problematic for people that are stuck within a dualistic sort of idea of reality, because that polarizing effect of electromagnetism will make you subject to that good and bad, up and down, right and wrong. And so within Taoism, that's not how we embody what it is that we're experiencing. There's two potentials. So whether you look at something, even something as ominous as a a crafted entity that came from the dark bowels of the mind of Wes Craven, Freddy Krueger. That potential is only valid if you make it so, and then it becomes something that can be problematic for the experiencer, because they keep investing their intention into it, and it gives it life. Have you ever heard your grandmother saying, "Oh, don't give it life, don't speak on it, don't say it"? Well, your intention, and we referred to this just a few moments ago, is the very laser focus of creating your reality. All of it is energetic potential, and it all comes from that very moment. So the more you invest in it, then that's why people are like, well, Shifu, is Freddy Krueger real? I'm like, the energetic potential of that spirit energy is 100% real. What you do with it is whether you turn it into this evil, demonic, Satan-like sort of like character that it's been portrayed as, it will reveal itself as that. If you're a Taoist, you look at it and you go, it's some yin energy that's really quite flat and actually has a little bit more yang. And in essence, it doesn't have very much structure to it at all. And they're like, oh, it has, well, there's no place for a journey, for a Taoist seeker, there's no place for fear. Fearlessness is part of embodying that present moment. And so
that would be part of that every day.
Oh, yeah. And so people move away from this stuff and they don't get caught up in it. And it's like, okay, well, that's really scary. Be careful what you wish for, the old expression, because now you're creating this dialogue that, 20, 30 years ago, when someone would come to me saying, I had a psychotic episode, or they needed an exorcism or whatever, that's part of my Taoist lineage and part of the rituals, someone would be perceived as having a delusion. Now, I could show you a dozen times where you put someone in a situation where you exhume these type of energetic potential from them, and they look like something out of The Exorcist. There's no question. I could give you dozens of counts of these types of experiences. I actually had my mother at one point a participant in one of my channeling classes that was outside of priest class. It was just a channeling class, and this particular woman did exactly. It was like a case study in the very Hollywood sort of like creation,
like depiction of possession.
Oh my goodness! And so she spun around and she was thrown across the room, and my mother's jaw dropped, and the other 20 students, their eyes opened like saucers. And my mother doesn't swear, and she went, "What? This is real?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is. But you are the master keeper creator of your reality, and all of this is all part of potential. And if you're living in this sort of experience, and emotions, part of the human condition, are the things that you're operating on, and they will present themselves because you're now moving into this other space, right? You're moving past the third to the fourth. You can only observe the third if you're in the fourth, just so anyone understands what we're speaking of. I'm not really a big fan. I kind of like get rid of the old time, space time thing. Oh, well, it's overrated. Let's go right into another dimension, something greater than that. Let's get down with something a little bit more potent. And so people don't seem to understand that when I say you're a creator of your reality, it has been validated, even right down to science today. There are certain degrees that we can validate those very words, that this is not just some sort of like talking head nonsense from some guy who's a guru at some sort of ancient Taoist philosophy. No, it's becoming more and more evident as we continue from a day-to-day basis that there are experiences and experiments that will validate through the number crunching that the math doesn't lie, and it can show you. So
Well, I
It,
think
it
I'm hearing that number one, if we're looking at a beautiful sage practitioner of Tao, we're definitely going to see the white with the gold and then the purple and this beautiful aura. We're going to feel such an attraction to their presence. We're going to feel them including us and everyone else as part of their being. So we'll probably call that a love word. We will probably feel this amazing love. I'm assuming that by that time, they will be able to show the ability to not get caught up in fear and not react out of fear and anger and all the things that fear does and makes us do, but instead will show mastery of emotion because their center point is in the now and it is in what lies right now, and therefore they can respond, and it's thoughtful and it's responding in the most loving way possible. And at the same time, it sounds like when you're talking about the life of a priest of Taoism, you're going to encounter things like probably have to do some depossessions and some other things. And like you said, there's going to be people who only think it's Hollywood and don't believe any of that exists. And at the same time, I love what you're trying to tell people, which is, well, for that person, it doesn't exist because they're not putting their mind there. Like that's not where their intention and mind is. In a way, their beautiful energy field is already the force field that keeps all of that out. So for them, it doesn't really exist. However, for the person who is drowning in fear and has not really created a solid sense of self, and I don't mean that as a physical form, but I mean the self. This is where vocabulary fails because, of course, we're all permeable and we should be at a certain level. But in another vocabulary, if we're too permeable and open and we have not solidified self enough, then that means any other energy that has been created can enter our field and therefore, let's say, possess us. And if we don't have the mind, well, I'll say it this way: if we have the mind that just lets it all in, can believe it, and like run with it in like the worst possible way, we're gonna need our own depossession. And at the same time, when someone's really developed skill, they know that all of that is created, all of that can be dissolved, and none of it has to be lived. None of it has to be within their own being. Did I kind of summarize fair enough?
yeah. I mean, it becomes a situation where you are, as I repeat before, master, keeper, creator of your experience. So what you're getting from your experience you're a co-creator of that. So understanding that, I'm not dismissing that if someone believes in Satan or demons or ominous, nefarious sort of energies, that they don't exist, because they do. I've come across them, but I honestly, I could spend 10 years and never see them and then get a fire sale on them for 6 months, because it's sort of a situation where people are where they're at in their own conscious journey. And once you
Almost like a cultural collective belief phenomenon.
well, yeah, especially within Chinese culture, because they're extremely superstitious. And we have, an immortal or God for everything. So and what people need to understand about that viewpoint is, I have over 171 teachers that I access at will. Lao Tzu has been my personal teacher and guide for over 30 years, and I'm in direct connection with him on a second-by-second basis. I don't claim to know anything. I know nothing. I'm as dumb as rocks. Yet he can make me look really good sometimes, whether I'm referencing information or I'm talking about something that's on a deeper level, where we just get directly his insight into what that is. The whole point of it is, when you're having these dialogues, they're facets of what someone would consider, we within Taoism, we consider it the diamond, which is perfection. So perfection is the mother, which is all things. So you cut from that cloth the distorted reality that you're perceiving in this 3D, that we've resorted to referring to space, time, space. These are things that are creating this limitation that creates the distortion. So you've taken a cloth of perfection and you're cutting out what you perceive as your reality, the wall, the colors, the
Great
image,
metaphor.
the table. And so that is nothing more than that, what that is. Once you return back to that, we go, okay, so we're going from light to wave to matter to particle. Guess what? How exciting is that? Now you have this situation where you have an energy. It comes in a form of a coffee cup, a gong, whatever it is. That energy has a vibration. That vibration has a frequency. That frequency, if met with the right resonance, will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. I think that's a selling point for most people on things like The Secret. A lot of manifestation coaches, people talk about this resonance, but this is where you get subject to it within a duality. A duality is this polarizing effect of what we've been speaking of this whole time, the electromagnetism that is this perception of what we're experiencing right now. So that polarizing effect will come in that form. So you will have this experience where you may come across, as I had shared with you, the energetic profile, the auric profile. Now, that can come in a million forms, but generally speaking, that's the fundamental forms that you will perceive it in, or you will experience or feel it in. Now, the opposite of that will be you're in the space with that same energy and you're repelled by them because there's so many things that you're contending with within this duality that makes that resonance so high that you cannot hold that resonance. You're not drawn to it like a moth to a flame. You are repelled by it because of where you're at your own level of cultivation and own journey. And all of a sudden it will perceive from a humanistic perspective as, I don't like that person. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they say. I don't like their hair, their color, whatever it is. I don't like them because the resonance is so high. Your stuff is coming to the top, and it appears to you as a human being that it's them that is the issue. When in turn, if you look closer, it's the very emotional content that is revealing itself that you could quite easily dissolve, surrender, and basically expand. Yet most people are not there yet. They come to a place where they're just like, I just don't like that person. It's really, oh my goodness, they make me feel like garbage. When in actuality, it's the resonance that they're presenting as an opportunity for you to heal. And that's one of those aha moments for most Taoist seekers or conscious creators is, so if I get you right, then what you're saying, Jifu, is the resonance is revealing this lower frequency stuff that is referred to as an emotional content from a humanistic perspective. And that is the very irregularity that is creating this deficiency or sort of static energy within my universe. And to create that regularity, I can heal from it and let the energy flow through it. And you can do it with your attention intention. It doesn't have to be anything more or less than that, which comes and refers back to the bellows, which is the contracting and expanding. Once you realize that you have this inner power, all bets are off. All of a sudden, holy moly, this idea of Jedi mind tricks is not is not some nonsense that they're talking about in the Star Wars movie. It's real. So the profile becomes so palpable that your attention intention will generate the very energy that we spoke about from the light to matter and creating that as energy. Does that make sense?
It does. Do you want to give someone an example of something that, as you were on your path, it was, wow, I just created that. I was a co-creator with the universe, and wow, look at this profound thing. You mind sharing an example?
Yeah, I mean, I think over 30 years, I've seen so many things.
Something that stands out perhaps over the years.
dozen. Oh, I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it. This woman had this cyst on her breast from breastfeeding, a blocked duct, and literally it was the size of a softball in her
Wow.
chest. It was completely irritated. It was red. You could see that it was operation would be probably the next form of action. Take her to the emergency room. I was given a situation where I was an observer present at that particular moment. Of course, someone called me and said, "Oh, look, can you do anything for this woman?" Da, 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 da. And both her and myself witnessed this as it rose to the surface, to the top of her skin. The skin opened up, and what would perceive a liter of pus poured out of her chest as she leaned into the sink, and then it sealed back up in front of my very eyes.
Yeah,
That's the
amazing.
example of
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. And am I the next coming of Jesus? Am I the answer to all healing? No. It's about being the observer, being the now moment. You bring that resonance that we've been just talking about, and it happens to help that person remember who they are. And guess what happens when that happens? Magical, supernatural, paranormal things start taking place, because all they're doing is having a Shazam moment and going, I remember who that is. I remember who I am. I remember that feeling. And that's why we always talk about, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. That's your own self-evidence realization. And so that's an example. Hopefully that was something that.
Yeah, that's a good example. And based on how you described it, I'll just remind viewers, since the bulk of so many Western viewers are, if they have a certain faith, often they're coming from the faith, the Christian faith. And, even Christ said two things. He said, this I do, you also will do and can do. And he also pointed out how he can't heal everyone. It was kind of pointing to the fact that this is a co-creation. So, how often did he say it is your own faith that has healed you? So I think there's so often pointing to the fact that healing is a state. So if I'm going to be healed by myself or anybody else, I have to be in a mindset of allowing healing to happen. And I have to not have any blocks or ulterior motives of why that healing shouldn't happen. And at the same time, it is true that we can amplify energy. So let's say if you and I were together and then we're focused on a third party, certainly the energy is going to amplify. And therefore, in some ways, that person will feel like we helped them heal because our energy was combining with theirs and being amplified in this healing direction. But again, if their deepest intent within them is for healing not to occur, there's nothing we can do about that, is in my experience. And at the same time, if their intent is completely to be healed, and they are even open to the fact that perhaps their own mind can heal them, they can. But if at least they're open to the fact that with other people involved, they can be healed, well, then they can be healed. So does that kind of dovetail with your experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get into energy healing with the idea of servitude. Yet there's still this need to validate themselves as being of value. Instead of knowing that, they need someone else to confirm that they are of value, which then in turn someone would possibly reference it as an ego state. Well, it's not really. I've gone down that path many times, and I get to a certain point where, I get a lot of people that will come to me, grandma's sick, something's happened, and I will, and Tom and I have had great conversation about this, where he's been in the same situation. Your attention and intention from his model changes the probability of what's going to happen. So I get that a lot, where grandma's in a coma, she's going to die. And the next day after someone called me and said, well, is she going to be all right? All I do is tap into the information and I go, yeah. And they're like, whoa, the doctor said she's going to die. I said, don't worry about it. And because I'm not invested, people need to understand this. I'm not invested in an outcome where you need to tell me, oh, you're the next coming of Jesus. You're so impressive. You're so amazing. When you are just in that now moment, that injection of your attention intention will alter everything in a way that will be to the collective consciousness a higher frequency. If you can replicate that resonance, like the charge you and I are getting, that's that knowing. That's all it takes. And all someone is doing is being reminded that that is present within them. And then all of a sudden the Shazam moment takes place and poof. And so for many, I've done this a lot, healing, physical healing, mentally, emotionally, this stuff for 30 years. And at a certain point early in the game, and that's I'm referring to dear friend Tom, he calls it a game. It is a game. It's a virtual game, whatever, just using Tom's words. Early in the game, you come to an understanding where people would just come to me, oh, I need a healing. I've got cancer. I've got that. And I do it for them and it'll be miraculous. I come back, the blood works perfect, everything else. And then 3 or 6 months later, they're coming back to me going, well, the cancer came back, or I did this or do that. Now, what I decided was through my own teaching instantaneously was, let's be the co-creators. I'm going to bring the resonance. All you do is remember that, and you create your healing. Now, I don't have to word it like that. I just come into the space, my attention, intention, bringing that resonance reminds that person of their own resonance, and it becomes an embodied moment of now that is permanently altered for their journey and their reality. And that's where you go, whoa, now it's a whole nother ball game, because I'm not invested. People need to understand, for this type of stuff to take place, for you to witness this, to be embodied in this. And if you notice, I always use that word witness. I'm not the Grand Master Wizard or Merlin that's doing it. I can teach you how to obtain the resonance and cultivate the energies and do crazy things that are supernatural, that are all this kind of stuff from the energetic potential, doing crazy things, that's not a problem. It becomes a little lackluster at a certain point when you can do crazy things like levitating and all that kind of, it loses its entertainment value when what exactly are you going to do with that? Okay, you have attained a certain level of cultivation, but what does that mean? What does that mean to you? For me, I've never been sort of inspired or excited by that. That's just my own personal journey. I'd rather see someone mentally, emotionally, physically healed. That gets me all warm and fuzzy inside. And that would probably be why that's all I experience all day long throughout my whole life. This is the part where people need to understand. You don't need to be invested in it. And that's where people get really, oh, it's that simple? Yeah, it's that simple. Yet you're still separating yourself from the first person, third person, no person. You're separating yourself by needing to be acknowledged or validated for what it is that's taking place. The Grand Poopah came in and he waved his wand, and, through this ritual, all these things took place. I probably, so many thousands of times that I don't even have numbers. I could probably write a book for lifetimes about the stuff that I've seen. At a certain point, you get to a place where you need to understand. And for me, it took me about a week. The first time I experienced it, this was, again, in those events of all the things that I was speaking of initially, I started witnessing physical healings almost a week or two after that. It's been an ongoing thing. Now, for me, I spent about a week really conflicted. I was like, I don't want anyone else to be Jesus. I'm the only Jesus here. And that's a human thing, right? It's like, I have this magic tool. I don't want to share it with anyone else. And what happens is you're fighting you're fighting what is your default. You're fighting the selflessness that is who you really are. You're resistant to that selflessness. You're resistant to the servitude that is the true nature of you as an ambassador to planet Earth. You are an ambassador to collective consciousness that is raising humanity. That is the general understanding as a Taoist of the very purpose of a human being's awakening to this potential in this journey, in this lifetime. Does that make sense?
Oh, Sanxing, that is so beautiful. It seems like the perfect note to end on, because how do we go after that?
Right, right.
It's
And
so beautiful.
well, it is. It really is. And so you get past that, and then you start realizing that, you know, and I have people calling me all day long, most days, with very similar events, and I have no problem going, don't worry, it'll be okay. And people go, whoa. But, you know, but, and then the next day is, oh my goodness, it's happened. It's gone away. It's happened. All I'm doing is acquiring a resonance that is altering what would be lower or stagnant frequency and bringing it back to its original state. You're just resetting it to its original state. That's all that's going on. And by doing that, as being an anchor to that, people remember who they are. And all of a sudden, from a neuroplasticity perspective, you could, you know, you could sum it up to, you know, Greg Braden's version of mirror neurons and what he would consider his contribution to HeartMath and, you know, heart and brain coherence. You know, within Taoism, we synchronize the upper, middle, and lower dantian, the sun, the earth, and the moon. The sun is the supreme purity, the keeper of light. The earth is jade purity, the keeper of information. And the moon is the lower dantian, which is highest purity, the keeper of energy. Now, when you go deeper into the lower dantian, that's why it's opposing what people's traditional idea of alchemy is in relation to energy, because they always refer to the lower dantian as the cauldron, which is the lie. That's the manipulation. That's why I could get 100 people that tell me they've trained in Negong and they couldn't resuscitate the energetic potential of anything, and they're frustrated, they're upset, they're like they've been sold a bill of goods, and they're like, this is ridiculous. It's like, I've spent years training this stuff, and they're always saying, well, more form, you're not eating enough plants, you didn't abstain from sex for 120 days, you know, all these constructs that are separating this person further and further from their true nature. And when you do that, you get these people that are lost, but they still have this internal desire to want to find the truth for them, which is the potential of this energetic alchemy. And so the lower dantian is the primordial mother that goes even deeper than anything you could imagine, which is the merging of the sun and the earth. And so this is just another ancient sort of like understanding of these cultivational practices that would be more, you know, contemporary in, you know, Joe Dispenza saying, don't strike a match in a dark place. And guess what? Hey, you know, with a coherence of the heart and the brain, using the neural network that you have in your brain, you actually have in your heart. So you have a mini brain in your heart, and people go, holy moly. When I lead with my heart, I realize all things are perfect. When I synchronize these energies, when I get a gut feeling, it's dead on accurate, because it is about synchronizing. It is about creating fluidity. And so you can get misdirections where I can have people go, a heart is a liar. My heart is lying to me, because your energy still has to be regulated. Your energy is not regulated. And all you have to do is be aware of these practices and start regulating the energy. And all of a sudden your heart won't lie to you. You know, you'll have a thought, you'll get a gut reaction, and they will be experiential. They will be evidence-based. You will be able to go, when I got that feeling, it was 100% accurate. And this goes back to that.
Yeah, what I love too about you bringing up HeartMath is, and I love all these people that you've brought up, right? The HeartMath people, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza. Another one I'll bring up is the contribution of James Oshman, who wrote Energy Medicine, The Scientific Basis. And there's so many more that, it'd be hard to start naming them all, who have given us a beautiful contribution. But if I'm synthesizing in my own mind, what you've raised here is energy can be coherent like a laser. So it's beautifully well organized and done in a way that's like a laser, or it can be very scattered and chaotic. And so a typical human feels chaotic because literally at an energetic level, it is more chaotic, and therefore it looks more random, and it looks like it has random effects. On the other hand, when we begin to cohere our mind, and even more so, like you said, life with information, with the energy, like when we start aligning the centers, it's as if we have one beautiful coherent laser with another and another. And so the amplification, the resonance that starts happening is exponential. And no wonder it seems to have power. No wonder it starts having effects, because it really is like a laser. So yes, I love that HeartMath found that the heart is actually sending more signals to the brain than the brain to the heart. And so I love that we really do get the sense that, wow, information is coming in through the heart. So no wonder we start looking at that when we're feeling more intuitive. And no wonder there's a softening that takes place, because we have to be receptive. If that left brain is so busy and so firm and so full of itself, they're not going to experience anything. In my experience, it's like a gear. You can be in the gear of the left brain, and I'm glad I have my left brain when I have to read a book or I have to fill out a form. On the other hand, if I'm actually wanting to receive a spiritual download, is not usually going to happen if I'm in the left brain. I have to be in a more receptive state that is still, that is open, that is empty, so that something can come in and I can actually see it and witness it and feel it. So like all you said, all these beautiful contributors that are helping us know that energy is real. I guess there's a phrase called effective energy. So if we're talking, like you mentioned, Tom, and more quantum language, we can call it effective energy, I guess, back and then. But we are changing probabilities, like Tom said. So if we think of the quantum realm as everything existing in superposition, it means everything is existing all at once. Well, what have you called it? It's all now. But imagine that really at the quantum level, this really is speaking about our reality. We at a certain level exist in all things all at once, in all states all at once. So what is that we're going to manifest? Well, we're going to manifest that which we focus on, attend, intend, and make very coherent like a laser. If we're going to be really halving it, and like you said, I've got this intent, but I have this counteractive intent, we're getting muddier and muddier. We can study for 30 years and we're not going to see the results because we're too muddied, we're too divided. So no wonder a house divided, isn't very useful. And no wonder it's all about aligning and cohering and what have you. So when you think of leaving viewers with any last wisdom or last teaching stories, what would you like to leave them with?
Well, when you look at your experience as a seeker, as someone listening to this podcast, everything from a Taoist perspective is in the perfect place right here, right now. And no matter what it is that you're experiencing, it is of value. Nothing goes to waste. Never, ever goes to waste. That would be the opposite of, and part of the polarizing effects of the very dimension that you're experiencing right now. So know that you're in the perfect place at the perfect time, hearing the perfect conversation about your realization of you and remembering who you are as perfection manifests.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that. It has been such a delight to be able to have this long, extended conversation with you. And I'm actually looking forward to some next time when we talk. So thank you so much, Sanxing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my dear friend.